My name is Fabiola Eyholzer. I'm a people and culture advocate, and my passion is to build human-centric organizations. I am thrilled to be on Voices of the Future and working together with all of you.
We're very honored and privileged to have Fabiola Eyholzer with us. She is a people and culture advocate. She's an activist to make sure that things work within organizations. She's passionate about bringing about real change in the world of work and in the world of business processes and as we go forward. She's joining us all the way from the United States, and we are delighted to have her here today on Voices of the Future. Fabiola, welcome.
Thank you, Tariq. It's a pleasure being here.
Fabiola, it was wonderful to meet with you online and amazing to have you on board as one of our participants and our partners in this particular process. Tell us about yourself. Tell us, who is Fabiola today? And I'll follow on that question is, where did Fabiola come from?
Well, I grew up in a small mountain town in the Swiss Alps, close to the Italian border, next to the Matterhorn, to the famous Swiss mountain. And I had a very carefree childhood. You know, back in the 70s, we were still allowed to roam the streets and, you know, just get together with all the neighborhood kids and just be creative and do whatever we wanted to do. And we also had to solve our own problems and our little squabbles and everything. So it was very carefree. It was an amazing time to grow up. And after school, I went on to a vocational program, which meant that I went to school part-time and I went to work part-time to learn a profession. And that really suited me well, because the traditional classroom setting, I got a bit tired of it by the time I was done with school. So I decided to do the vocational training. And I worked for a company in their finance department, which was a lot of fun. I love data. There's so much beauty in data. I'm very analytical in my thinking. And that's also where I discovered my love for spreadsheets. You know, back in the day, it was still Lotus 123. So most people won't remember that.
I do.
But even to this day, I would get up at 2 a.m. To do a spreadsheet. So I always loved that. And then after that training, I was offered an opportunity to go and work in the UK, which was amazing. And it really instilled in me that love for different cultures and different backgrounds and different perspectives. So I stayed in the UK for quite some time. And I also studied there. I studied in Switzerland and in Barcelona. And I first did a bachelor's degree in finance, then a master's degree in international business. And that really opened up opportunities for me to go and work in management consulting. And there I used to work in more strategy consulting, process consulting. And we used to work with innovation projects in industry. And that was really neat because, you know, these people, they were hardworking, down to earth people. You had to talk straight, you know, there was no BS, no hiding behind some fancy words. So we had to get to the point, and it was quite a learning journey for me. And then I moved into HR consulting. I never ever thought that I would end up in human resources. Well, 2 decades later, I'm still in HR and I'm loving it. And what was fascinating about the world of HR, I never imagined how complex it is and how much impact you have across the entire organization. And of course, in the 2 decades that I've been in that field, my thinking has definitely evolved. And the world of work and the world of HR that I'm advocating today is very different to the world that I initially encountered. And so for the past 10 years, I've lived in New York and I traveled the globe to help organizations build those human-centric organizations, human-centric places of work.
It's interesting you've given us your full journey. Let me take you back to the 16-year-old Fabiola in the mountains of Matterhorn and running around there. Was there anybody in your life at that point in time that genuinely influenced you, that shaped your thinking? Could be a parent, could be a teacher, it could be a mentor. Do you have a memory of that?
Mhm. Oh, there were so many people who shaped me, who influenced me. And, I'm fortunate that I got my dad's analytical aspect or analytical thinking, and I got my mom's empathy. But I think the person who inspired me the most was my granddad. And he always said, life is beautiful. And, fate sometimes throws you a curveball. And, even if it's not going to be nice, it doesn't matter. Just get up, do it, see the beauty around you, see the beauty in people and your surroundings, and make the best of your situation. And I think that's sort of a life motto that always shaped me and that always helped me.
It's interesting you say that, because I think the wisdom of our grandparents, that came from a very tough, strong generation. They came up in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and those were tough times. We live in amazing times now, and we think life is tough. It actually isn't. They went through those tough times, people who are in that sort of generation. So I have a lot of respect for them and for their wisdom. So I can totally resonate with what you're saying. You mentioned two words which are close to my heart. One of them was the analytics piece, which is relevant and important, which is what I would call the left side of the brain, and the right side of the brain, which is more about empathy and emotion, which is your mum. Question is, what did you learn from both sides, and are you able to apply both sides, or are you tilting towards one or the other?
Mm-hmm. So I think I'm a data gal at heart. So, that analytic thinking, solving puzzles, I love puzzles. I love challenges. I don't enjoy doing sort of that routine work. I really like to have a challenge. And that's deeply ingrained with me. But I always look for connection with people. I look for the good in people, the positive things that we have in common, to build those connections. And that's really my mom that is coming through that empathy. And it has served me really well throughout my career. But there was a point in time where I didn't pay enough attention to the empathy. And it was back in the day when I first had leadership responsibility. It was at a time when we focused so much more on, profits and KPIs and things like that. And I was a very good leader for people who were very self-driven, who were very determined, who were very independent. But I wasn't a good leader for those who needed a bit more support, more guidance. And also that's when I came in touch with Agile and Agile ways of doing things, more connecting with people. And that was just such an eye-opener for me, that I knew there is a different way out there to engage with people, to interact with people. And that was a way for me to get far more in touch with that more empathy side of it, getting to know people, meeting them where they are at and helping them along their journey. And it made me a better leader.
Indeed, and I think it's probably a combination of all of those. But today's leadership is even more complex. I think you need to not only be an empathetic leader and a analytical leader, but you need to be a technologist. You need to be a futurist. You need to be a steward of the planet. There are many other key elements that are coming in. We'll talk about that as we go forward. You mentioned the word agile, and agile obviously as in terms of agile HR and that whole platform. Can you explain what the platform does? Because I'm going to challenge you on another word which is closer to my heart, and as a futurist, I'm sharing this with you, and that is the word adaptability. I think the world is changing from resilience to adaptability, and agility gets us there. How do you see that, and how does your platform work?
So you're absolutely right. Survival means adaptability, means adaptation. And that's really where resilience and strength comes from. We sometimes think that strength comes from that stability that we get from hierarchical structures in our organizations. And that was true in the past. That was true when organizations were still run as a machine. But today, organizations, if they want to continue to thrive and survive in that fast-paced environment, they need to be adaptive ecosystems. And for that, they need to be able to adapt, to be responsive. And that's where Agile ways of working come in. And you can put the label Agile on it or something else. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It's more important that you realize where the strength comes from. And it's from that adaptability, from being able to learn, to pivot, to unlearn things, to explore new ways of doing things. And that's really where Agile comes into play.
Staying with Agile HR and how it works within organizations, there are a lot of people who get trained on this. How can they maintain the quality, the consistency, the ethos of what you are trying to achieve? Because you're obviously evolved more and you're at a higher level. How do you scale this and how do you get it out there?
It all starts by recognizing and understanding that the way we think about human resources or organizations in general is no longer true or is not going to carry us into the future. And when you think about it, the term human resources was first used in 1893 by J.R. Cummins. So HR is 120 years old. And whether we like it or not, a lot of our thinking, of our underlying beliefs is still stuck in that time. So the first thing we need to do is recognize that we live in a very different world and that it's not enough to put our processes and tools onto fancy systems and leveraging AI, but it's all about humanizing work. Because when we think about it, competencies, technical skills are becoming a commodity. So what is left is truly the question of what do only we humans bring to the table?
Sure.
Our passion, our imagination, our potential for social and emotional intelligence. And the question that we have in human resources, as it's going to be recoined, people and culture today, is how do we leverage that? How do we create environments where people can be and do their best self and bring that to the table? How can we leverage it? And that's going to be the core for P&C going forward.
You're absolutely right in terms of the way you're going, but and I always challenge the word resources. I think humans are a little bit more than a resource. And that's a very 20th century mindset. It used to be personnel and then became resources. We've got to start moving out of that potential, that environment where we are seen as a resource, but more as an integral part of an ecosystem and how we can deliver that. And I'm going to talk to you about trust. And I believe that trust, closely followed with truth and ethics, is going to define our future, absolutely. Because there's a trust deficit. We don't trust our organizations, we don't trust our institutions, we don't trust our politicians, we certainly don't trust our media. So you add them all up, there's a massive trust deficit. And then walks in an HR consultant or a strategy consultant or somebody like that and say, oh, I'm going to show you, I'll give you the new model, the new panacea of how everything comes together. In that deficit of trust and people resisting new things coming on board, how do you navigate your way through that? What is your key sort of secret sauce in terms of talking to the CEOs, talking to HR directors and so on? What do you bring to the table in that way?
Yes, it all goes back to culture. Do we have the right culture? And if we think about it, culture today is the conversation that is not happening in board meetings, but it's going to be the conversations, the conversation that we need to have going forward, going into the future. And part of it is trust. How do we build that trust with people? We start by truly caring about people. And when we think about the word culture, it comes from the Latin cultus. It means care. So we need to start connecting with people. We need to start knowing what people care about and truly do that. And that starts building trust. But we can only do that if we redefine the way we look at organizations, the way we look at work, the way we look at people. And that's where really the new thinking around HR comes in. We say, how do we set up an environment that allows us to do that, that allows us to build trust, to care for people, and create that new human-centric way of working?
You're preaching to the converted. I'm entirely with you. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, and all the time. It's the most difficult thing to impact. And a lot of the work that I do, at board level and so on is really to somehow impact culture. My challenges are different. My challenges are that I get what I call an immune system, a corporate immune system response that it doesn't work, it's too expensive, culture's too slow, show me the ROI, and. So we are living in a very competitive world, results-driven world, outcome-focused world, and we come in with something soft and fluffy, which I do all the time, and say culture, people, motivation, passion, purpose, all of these key elements to really shape the agenda. I sit on many boards, and about 5 or 6 hours into the board meeting and a couple of hours left, and I said, nobody's mentioned the word culture, or nobody's mentioned the word AI strategy, because they're scared. Now, in the last 6 to 12 months, AI strategy has come up a few more times because people are, I think post-ChatGPT has happened. My thinking is, how do you make culture in this conversation, in this narrative, tangible? How does one talk to a CEO or a board and say, folks, it's not just soft, fluffy stuff, it's real. Culture is hard. Culture is strong. Culture is tough. And I need to get to them in that kind of language because they understand that. Mm-hmm. What is your advice on that?
Yes, so you're absolutely right. People and culture is going to be the key differentiator in the future, because the technical skills, all of that is going to become a commodity. But our leaders need to truly understand why is the new world of work changing. And here we have, the fifth industrial revolution and so on and so forth, to really understand why it's so important. And then our leaders need to truly believe in that. Because again, people are going to be the key differentiator in the future, and they have to walk the talk. And because they're not walking the talk today, they are not really believing it. Their mindset is still stuck in sometimes the third or even the second industrial revolution. They're still stuck there. But if they don't walk the talk, if they don't see that the most important person going forward next to the CEO is not going to be the CFO or the CEO, it's going to be the CPO, the Chief People Officer, is going to be the second most important person in the organization. And unless they really believe in that, and they show their people that they believe it, not in words, but in deeds, we're not going to get there.
But isn't that equation literally reversing? Because yes, people are really important, but 80% of my work can be done by a bot. So people are becoming, by definition, less important. So Fabiola, tell me, while the importance of people is going down, yes, I need a few people who have empathy and connection and client relationships and so on. 80% of my work is being done. So what are you doing here?
And that's really about the question, what do humans bring to the table? Yeah. Our passion. You're not going to get the passion from an AI, at least not anytime soon. No. You're not going to get the same, maybe imagination you can get, but someone has to trigger it. Someone has to bring it to life. And it's also about caring for your people, for your customers, and bringing in that potential, that power of imagination and collaboration that is really going to move the needle going forward. So there might be some businesses who are just going to be run on the technology, but that there are going to be other businesses that are going to be people-driven. But of course, organizations in the future are not going to be sort of that stable, hierarchical construct. It's going to be a living, breathing organism. Innovation hubs will come up where we have people collaborating, working together, and it will dissolve, and new innovation hubs are going to pop up someplace else. So it's going to be a very different definition of organizations and a very different definition of what is work and what is the type of work that we're doing. Yes, routine work is going to be gone.
Yes.
A lot of the analytical work is going to be gone, but there is going to be a lot of innovative work that we're still going to do, where we're going to collaborate in very different ways.
Yeah. Since you're a data person, let me throw some data points at you. 7 out of 10 people, 70% of the people who will be holding jobs in 2030, those jobs have not been invented today. According to, this is Dell and Accenture. So that to me is a very awkward data point. So what are you training people for when you don't even know what the job is going to be in 5 to 7 years' time? So that's a challenge, number one. 51% of millennials and Gen Z hate banks and financial institutions, and they want to work on an app and an environment of fintech. So there go the banks out of the window. Lawyers, 80% of the legal profession, 80% of the accounting profession is going to fundamentally reinvent itself because it has put together a whole new environment and a whole new structure as we look forward. So with all of this shift, and one more, currently only 10% on average, according to Accenture, only 10% of people in organizations, in boards rather, have technology qualifications, high quality technology qualifications. Therefore, we're talking tech, AI, this, that, and the other on the one hand, and on the other, we don't have any board members who are tech oriented. So the reason I'm throwing these 3, 4, 5 data points out there is that these are the kinds of board challenges that I'm constantly encountering, and I dare say you are too. What are you bringing in? What is your thought in terms of Agile HR, in terms of the construct of this type of environment? And so say, don't worry about it. These are the things that Agile HR can do for us. This is how we will shape it. I mean, it's a very long question, but I'm wanting to try and get to you that these are the kinds of challenges that I encounter every day, and I dare say you have some good solutions.
Nice. And the answer is 3 words: learning, learning, learning. At the end of the day, we talk about survival is adaptability, but adaptability means learning. So we need to be able to learn and unlearn things very quickly. So we need to create an environment that is conducive to learning, where people enjoy learning, enjoy exploring new things, where change is not a threat. It's a chance, it's an opportunity. And the more we can be those enjoy learning and be able to learn, the better this is going to happen. And yes, we're definitely going to see a new breed of leaders and board members who have that capability and that foresight as well. So it's not just all about the capability, it's also about that foresight, because in the past, we talked about information workers. Today, we're talking about learning workers. And in the future, we're going to talk about caring workers. But we still have to go through that loop of learning workers first. So it's all about that adaptability. And Tariq, do you remember as a kid, did they ever ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yes.
I mean, today you don't even have a chance to answer that question. As you said, the jobs aren't even invented yet.
That's right, but I think you can start, but you're absolutely right. I agree with you, but I'm just sort of saying jobs haven't been invented, but I think a lot of young people are able to define what space they'd like to be in. So for example, I'm artistic. I like to explore. I love people. I love working on projects and so on. So I think and a lot of new education and learning would probably evolve in that kind of way, rather than in books and subjects, but more in terms of attributes and broader skills and capabilities and so on. I was talking to somebody just yesterday about a Japanese school, and I found it fascinating. Up to the age of 8 to 10 years of age, they're hardly learning anything other than understanding each other, behavior sets. Every Japanese school has a little garden that they have to work on to basically grow rice. So they are all farmers. They touch soil, they touch land, they know how the drainage system works. They'll be able to see something grow in front of them. Their little hands are going to be producing something. I found that fascinating in terms of a learning culture where you're learning real things. And I found that. What are your thoughts as a human people person and so on?
Yes, our education system definitely has to change, and we see these pockets. We have a lot of pockets in Scandinavia as well. The one you mentioned in Japan. So we have pockets. We have foresighted institutions that look for a different way to do it. But when you think about it, the history of schools, it started back in the day when we took people from the farms and put them into factories. They were taught how to do things, and they had to be able to repeat things that they were being taught reliably every single time. We weren't looking for creativity and imagination and transformative work. And we're still a bit stuck in that thinking. So we need to start changing that if we want to have different ways of connecting with people and giving them the life skills that they need, because the life skills that we needed in the past are no longer the ones who are going to get us into the future.
Interestingly enough, I was speaking to another guest who will be with you in the book and the platform. And I asked him, in his view, what is going to be the greatest technology of the next 25 years. And I thought he was going to talk about, I don't know, genetics or artificial general intelligence and things like that. And he said something very interesting, and it really made me think hard in terms of a different perspective. And he said, somebody who's going to sort out toilets and the sewage system. And I'm thinking, okay, you go with it. He said, there are 8 billion people. 8 billion people poop every day. Where does it go? And how much of that is being treated? We live in a Western bubble, but you go to Indonesia, you go to the Philippines, and what COVID has taught us is hygiene is so critically important as we look into the future. So he said, we need to crack that code. And interestingly enough, he said, we need to start working with our hands again. We need to literally, every single person needs to be a farmer or somebody who can be an artisan and so on. What are your thoughts about it? Because you and I spend times in offices and boards, and we're away from, that physical kind of work. And you're a young girl coming through from, farms and mountains of Switzerland. What are your thoughts about it?
It's definitely very important, even more important today, because we live on our phones. We live in the so-called social world that is not very social in most cases. So we need to get in touch with our roots again. And as you said, we have massive problems to solve as a human race. But what do we spend our time with? With office squabbles and office politics. Yep. So if we get rid of that stuff, we actually have the bandwidth, the mental and energetic bandwidth to solve these problems. And that's what we need to do if we want to have a successful future, and if we want to build a good world for our children and our nieces and nephews to have and to enjoy.
Are we good stewards of the planet, you and I? We are halfway through our lives. We're getting near to what I call half time. If you live to 100, we're about halfway there.
That's optimistic, but I'll take it.
Okay, that's good. And that's how I say it. I mean, by the time you reach 50, you're at half time. I mean, you can take a break, go and change your thing and come back and play the next 45 minutes football. But really we are, because longevity is coming in, and I think that's going to change things. Healthcare is going to change certain things. Are we leaving a good legacy for our children? Are we leaving a planet and an environment and a structure that they can actually enjoy and thrive on?
At the moment, I would say no. We have to do better. As individuals, as collective, I think we have to do better. And we probably need the younger generation to give us a little nudge, to give us a little kick to do it. But I also believe in the power of people, and that we can do it, even though it's the 11th hour. I still think we can do it.
I think we can, but our younger generation is actually quite disappointed by us at this point in time, and I think we need to build one of the things I developed is youth boards, shadow youth boards. So I sit on boards and I said, you guys are 60 years old and you're making decisions for 20-year-olds. I call it a 60, 40, 20-year-old. 60-year-old making decisions, 40-year-olds executing, and 20-year-olds are the main consumers. So bringing this 23, 25-year-old, and I've got a couple of these boards going at the moment, it's fascinating, because what we're now doing is bridging and building trust and looking at different perspectives. And these kids are sitting on these boards, and 4 hours into the meeting, and somebody said, nobody's ever, we've spoken governance, we've spoken finances, we've spoken, emoluments, we've spoken all sorts of things like that. But what we haven't spoken yet about is AI. What we haven't spoken about at this point in time is how we are going to be impacted by all of the technologies coming in, and they get jarred by that. And I think we need that shock to the system, and get a lot of these young people in our older environments to teach us things, so that we still have a lot of energy left in us next, say, 10, 20, 30 years, to be able to deliver something. What are your thoughts on bringing youth at the highest level of decision making?
Oh, absolutely. And, we talk a lot about diversity of thought. If we have people with different perspectives, different experiences, different ambitions sitting at the table, we're going to just take it to the next level. We're going to amplify ideation and solutioning. So we definitely need to have those conversations, and at all levels. This is not just at the top, thinking in traditional hierarchical structures. This is across the board. And I think that's the beauty about the way that we set up organizations going forward. It's more interdisciplinarity, and it's more bridging the gap between different generations, because every generation has a unique point of view to bring to the table, and we can leverage that. But absolutely agree, we need to come together to do it, and leverage that diversity of thought.
So as we get in towards the last segment of our conversation, how are you feeling right now? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling energetic, excited? Is it going the way you wanted it to go? Do I need to calibrate something?
No, it's great. I'm happy with the way it's going. It's easy to talk to you, so I enjoy it.
Fabiola, you are planning to come to our part of the world, and you're traveling internationally all the time with Agile HR. And I know you've explained to me very briefly, but for the audience, what is it? How does it work? And what are the next steps with it in terms of making it impactful for organizations?
Mm-hmm. So Agile HR at its core is really building human-centric places of work, human-centric organizations. So it's really about aligning the way we approach people and culture to the new way of working, to the new mindset that we have. It's a way to thrive in a fast-paced, fast-changing, very, in a way, volatile, very challenging world of business that we are operating in. And it's really a way to tap into what makes us human. We talked about the importance of humanizing work, and it's about a way to align people and culture to that new world.
And is it a program that you go into? Is it a 3-day program, a 3-month program? Are there modules? Is it online? Do you like to do it in person? How does it all come together?
So there are different ways. Back in the day when I went to business school, we did case studies. Every single day we had to present a case study. And there was this thing about excellence and best in class. And if a company did something really well and they excelled at something, we would copy paste that across the board. And no place more than in HR. If you look at things like performance management, learning and development, and so on, it works more or less the same in every organization. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, what corporate culture you have, what social culture you have. It doesn't take into consideration the individuality of an organization. And that is changing with this new way of working, where we figure out, who are you as an organization? What is your corporate DNA? What do you stand for? And we cater to that environment. So that's one shift in mindset. And the other thing is that we always start with training. We need to understand, why is this a new world of work? Why and how is it so fundamentally different to what we knew in the past and what we did in the past? So that's always the starting point. And then we go into a transformation. But we focus on the biggest pain points of the organization. For some organizations, it's talent flow. For others, it's performance. And we start changing the system around it. And what we always do is we apply systems thinking to the entire organization, because systems thinking helps us to make sense of complex adaptive systems. And let's face it, an organization and HR is a complex adaptive system. So we bring the different worlds together so that we can ensure, how do we scout for talent? How do we enable performance? How do you accelerate performance? How do we enable learning across the organization so that we can leverage the power of people and culture?
Do you use assessments, diagnostics, some kind of software that you apply? What are the methodologies? I'm looking at the how.
Yes, so we always start with problem or with analytics and understanding the true pain point that we're solving for, because quite often, and I'm sure you will recognize that from your work with board members, sometimes they can't articulate why they have a problem, why they want to change something. So we always spend time in understanding the why before we jump into solutioning and the how. And then we use an agile and more iterative approach to solve these problems, to ideate, to create a solution. And this is always done in a way where we change the organizational structure, where we reorganize around value and help them do this in a more iterative way.
Who is your ideal client? Who is the perfect client for you, especially in this part of the world? I understand and worked enough in Europe and the US, but here we are more touchy-feely. We are some more community-based. Failure is not an option. Try out telling a parent that let your child fail a little bit because they learn and it's an iterative process. So there are cultural, when you talk people and culture, there are huge cultural differences. There's nothing wrong, it's just the cultural shifts and differences. And the last thing is about mindset shift. And one of the phrases that I use is from mindset to heart set. How do you engage the heart while changing the minds? How do you engage with that culture changes? And who is the right audience, and what are the key messages for us here?
Mm-hmm. And you're touching on something very interesting. As you said, we're working across the globe with so many different companies, so many different organizations and different people. And something that we realized is that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter so much what social culture you're in, because the challenges are the same. It's all about how do we connect with people and how do we create an environment that is inspiring and engaging people to be their best selves and do their best work. And that is something that we see across the board. Of course, the way that you approach is the way you may be communicating, the way you're inspiring change and going about change might be different. So you're always meeting people where they are at. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to achieve the same thing.
That's given us a very good idea in terms of what your work is. Taking this work into the future, how will all of this change companies, change organizations, change work environments in the future of work, as I see it, as we look into the future?
So organizations in the future are going to look very different. So today we like to think about organizations like machines, working like a well-oiled engine, like a Swiss clockwork.
Like a total Swiss person.
Exactly. I had to sneak that in. But in the future, they are ecosystems, thriving, living, breathing ecosystems, and that's going to be reflected in the structure and in the way that we interact with people. So organizations are going to look very different, and they're going to follow a very different mindset. So you asked before about changing that mindset, and the way that we change mindset is one, through learning, through training to articulate the change in mindset. But at the end of the day, it's all about changing the environment, changing the system. Because how are we supposed to have leaders thinking and acting in a different way if they're still stuck in the same structure? If they are still running through the same policies and procedures, that change is not going to happen. It doesn't matter how beautiful our trainings and our slides and our banners are. Yeah. If we are not changing the environment, they cannot interact and be different. So that's really something that we focus on. How do we change those systems and policies and structures so that we can help leaders be amazing leaders? Before thinking. And, you asked about what companies do we work with or what is our ideal client? And it doesn't really matter what industry they are in or what type of organization. At the end of the day, it's about forward-looking organizations, organizations who are not as scared to challenge the status quo, organizations who say, we believe there is a better way out there. And we always say, listen to that gut feeling. If you have a gut feeling that there is a better way out there, I guarantee you there is one. Then be gutsy about it and do something. And those are our ideal clients. Clients are not afraid to break a few things, to challenge the status quo and take it to the next level.
Indeed, Klaus Schwab, who was a famous Swiss leader of the World Economic Forum, and I was in a panel with him, and he said, we were talking about change in the World Economic Forum. He said, the World Economic Forum works like a Swiss clock. We don't experiment with a Swiss clock. We can do it on the side. You can have your little sandbox on the side, but don't touch my basic system. And that's the sort of thing that I keep getting sometimes. So what I do is I apply what I call the 70-20-10 rule. 70% of the time you focus on core, the Swiss clock. 20% of the time you look at new things, and 10% serve purpose, passion, something of that nature. That's the formula that we give to our boards.
Yes, and it's interesting. We have that saying, never change or touch a running system. But here's the problem that we have right now. The system is no longer working. We just don't realize it yet.
That's true. That's true. I'd like to talk to you about fundamental shifts in life, epiphanies. Have you had an epiphany in your life that you'd like to share?
Yes, when I grew up, I was a very shy child. I lived in my own world. I was very happy to do my own thing. I was fiercely independent, still am. And it wasn't until decades later that I realized that I wasn't a shy kid. I was just introverted. But introversion comes with that stigma, you're antisocial, you're shy, you can't articulate ideas. And I read this book called The Introvert Advantage by Marty Olson. And he illustrated it really well to say, well, introverts are their neural system works differently. It reacts more to stimuli. So you need less of that. You're more like self-charging batteries, in order to recharge, you need the peace and quiet. You need to be able to think and go deeper into a topic. You want to understand all facets of a topic. Whereas extroverts, they are solar panels, they need the noise, the hustle and bustle out there. And the thing is that in society, we have a ratio 3-to-1. So 3 people are extroverted, 1 person is an introvert. So of course, the extroverts dominate the way that we think about introverts. But introverts have a lot of strength. There is strength in that inner world, being able to have those creative ideas and build on those ideas and build those capabilities. And I wish I would have known that beforehand, because especially my sister is the pure opposite. She's an extrovert. And I always felt I had to be more like her and others in my class, jumping up, engaging in conversations. But that wasn't me. And I had to really work on my coping mechanisms. And I wish I would have known about the introvert advantage, the strength that it's okay to be an introvert today. And I always recommend this book to parents as well. And I have a friend who read it, and she said, oh, my kids are grown now, but my boy is really an introvert. My girl is an extrovert, and she's an extrovert herself. And she said, I wish I would have read that book when they were younger. It would have helped me be a better parent and cater to both of them.
So it's a lovely story and a great metaphor. So thank you for that. You sort of preempted a question for me, and that was, what is your advice to parents going forward? Should they be hopeful? Should they be in total panic with ChatGPT and the way the kids are going completely? Every parent is like that, but I think the rate of change is way too fast right now. So what is your advice to parents? And should they be happy and comfortable, or should they just go into panic mode?
So I think stop hovering, let them have a bit more freedom, let them stumble, let them learn, let them sort out some of their problems by themselves, and let them connect with others, help them build those social relationships. And I think that's really an important life skill for people to learn.
Indeed, it is. But I work with a lot of people in learning and education, and the regulator is a problem. The universities and the way they organize things is a problem. But the biggest problem are parents. Parents still want the kid to go to Harvard or Cambridge or whatever. They still want them to excel at school and so on. So there's a lot of pressure. How much time do you spend, if any, coaching parents into being future parents? We talk about future kids, we talk about future companies. What about future parents?
I don't coach future parents
You
personally.
should. You should.
Maybe I should, but I think it's more about, yes, it's okay to have ambitions for your kids, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure that they are happy, because that's the way that they can be good human people. And yes, for some, it's going to be going to Harvard. For some, it's going to be an astronaut, whatever it is. But for some, it's maybe going to be, I'm a painter, sure, or I'm a carpenter. And that's okay too. So we have to rethink the way we look at being happy and fulfilled at work, and with that in our professional lives. We have to redefine that. So it's not the CEO can be very happy in his or her job or their job. Yeah. But someone can just be as happy being something else, and we should appreciate that too.
Indeed. And I think be able to absorb and empathize with different situations is really important. So as we come to an end of the session, if you were to leave a message in a bottle for 5 to 10 years from now for your kids or family or whatever, to sort of finally Fabiola threw this bottle 10 years ago, and look at what she's saying, what she used to think about 10 years ago. What would that message be? What would it look like?
Okay, so I would say I want to build or inspire and build human-centric organizations. I want to leave a better world of work for my nieces, my nephews, and their children. And that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I want to do.
That's more a purpose. I was looking for a nugget of wisdom. Because as an introvert, you're reflective, you're thoughtful, you're deep. What's that little nugget of wisdom that it could be something as simple as be kind to everyone or be kind to yourself? I don't know, something which comes from Fabiola deep down in her heart.
Yes. Be authentic and connect with others. Get off social media, but be authentic in your connections with others. Show empathy, care for others, and build those strong connections.
One of my favorite words, authenticity. And yes, the world is built around trust and authenticity. Fabiola, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We've meandered in all sorts of directions, and it wasn't a business interview as you might have thought earlier on. But I think your humanity, your understanding of behavior, your sensitivity and your empathy and kindness towards human beings with that analytical layer is a really important feature that we have picked up today. And as an advocate, as an activist, I would say, of culture and people, I hope you're extremely successful, and we are going to do a lot of work together. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Tarek. It was my pleasure being here.
So